Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Family Sedan channel. Just last month, Coinbase sued the SEC, which I was very happy to see. Not that I'm always thrilled with Coinbase, but I love seeing the fight being taken to Kim Jong-Gensler and the rest of the cronies over at the SEC. But now the SEC has responded to that, and they're basically trying to get this whole lawsuit just thrown out. I'm going to share with you some of the specifics and perspective from a number of attorneys within the community. I've got perspective from attorney Jeremy Hogan, attorney John Deaton, attorney James Murphy, got a couple comments from Brad Garlinghouse, Ripple CEO, of course, and Ripple's chief legal officer, Stuart Alderati, and got some thoughts from Paul Graywell, who is Coinbase's chief legal officer, just kind of breaking this whole thing down and highlighting perfectly the absurdity of all of this. But before going any further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a legal or financial background of any kind. I am not offering legal or financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. So here's a headline from CoinGape. SEC wants court to dismiss Coinbase demand for rules explanation. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission has recently asked the judge to deny Coinbase's request to compel the agency to respond to a rulemaking petition which Coinbase submitted last year seeking clarity on how securities laws apply to cryptocurrency. So I was paused to note, indeed, of course, they did file that last year. Hey, just looking for some clarity here. And then a ton of time passes, which to the typical human will be completely unreasonable. And Coinbase, recognizing that they might as well be talking to a brick wall, they decided to sue the SEC to compel the agency to respond. And in this writ of mandamus, it's basically Coinbase telling the judge, hey, could you please make this government agency do the job that it's supposed to do? Piece continues. Last month, Coinbase sued the SEC, claiming that the agency hasn't been prompt or reasonable in providing a response. Furthermore, the exchange is seeking a formal notice and comment process that would allow the public to weigh in. That would be a fun party. In its court filing on Monday, May 15th, the SEC called Coinbase's allegations baseless. In its filing, the commission's lawyers wrote, so here's what the SEC asshat attorneys wrote. Coinbase's preference for faster or different regulatory action by the commission does not entitle it to extraordinary relief from this court. The petition should be denied, end quote. Yeah, but you assets, you don't do your job. You are not out to protect the investors, and that's part of your mission statement. It's about capital formation and protecting investors. You're not doing that stuff. And then when good faith actors in our space, in the world of crypto, just want some damn clarity, you just hush your lips, and that's it. That's it. You just say nothing, and it's extraordinary what's being requested here by Coinbase, that you just do your damn job. Well, I don't think the everyday person is going to agree with that. Now, here's what Coinbase's chief legal officer, Paul Graywell, had to say about this. Today, the SEC responded to Coinbase's petition for a writ of mandamus, asking the court to require the SEC to respond just yes or no to whether it will undertake rulemaking for our industry. The SEC's answer? A resounding maybe. Today's filing may be the first time when the SEC has formally explained in court its views on whether and how the SEC should create rules for the crypto industry. The SEC told the court that rulemaking may take years and they're in no rush. The SEC acknowledged that it will continue to use enforcement actions as a substitute for rulemaking for the foreseeable future. But not to worry. Those enforcement actions may eventually inform not yet planned rulemaking. So pause, think about this. So this is what we know as regulation by enforcement. They're going to sue, and then apparently there could be some sort of clarity as a result of what the judges say. And then after that, after the judges say some things, after companies get sued into non-existence, then at some point in the future, the SEC might reflect upon that, and maybe they'll do some sort of rulemaking based on that. Maybe. It's not yet planned, but that's possible. Do you see the absurdity of this? And so actually, I'll just pull this up now, actually, if I can. Stuart Alderati. Look at what Stuart Alderati had to say here. He wrote, this is, of course, again, Ripple's chief legal officer. He wrote, found a typo in the SEC's brief. They refer to their active regulatory and enforcement agenda in crypto. Think they actually mean active regulation by enforcement agenda. Don't think any of us recall seeing the SEC's crypto regulatory agenda. Yeah, I was spot on, Mr. Alderati. And so anyway, then Paul Graywall of Coinbase continues. The SEC also said that the public statements by Chair Gensler are not formal guidance or policy statements from the SEC, and the public cannot rely on them as much. So think back to one of the most egregious examples of top SEC officials speaking with the intent to sway public opinion and impact how entrepreneurs behave in the space, yet still they're under this, perceived shield of, well, it's just my personal opinion, right? It does not impact an opinion here. Well, here's what Brad Garlinghouse had to say in response to that. Ripple CEO. He wrote, the hypocrisy to be an unelected bureaucrat where you can prognosticate on your bully pulpit at all times. Every week, a new video or speech. And then say no one should rely on your statements as guidance. And folks, that's exactly how it is. And they always put that little asterisk there. Hey, these are just personal opinions. And not provide, but that in conjunction with not providing clarity, but then preaching constantly. Because if you're on Twitter, especially if you follow Kim Jong-Gensler, which I do just because I have this YouTube channel. Not that I want to see him pop up in my newsfeed, but I do it for you people. but he pops up and he's constantly in video. It's just, I don't know what it is. Maybe he's trying to be one of those Kardashians that he sued. I don't know. But he just loves the attention. And so he's recording the videos and he's saying all this nonsense, but it's just his opinion. Meanwhile, there's nothing official from the SEC on how this is all supposed to be handled. And this is par for the course. SEC officials have been behaving like this since the dawn of time, effectively. But it's not helping anybody. And it's confusing. And again, if you go back to, in particular, Hinman in 2018, I think that was intentional. And I feel almost 100% certain of that, in fact, because the media was responding as though it was official decree from the SEC. Because most people at that point in time, certainly in crypto, didn't understand the difference between an official decree from the SEC and just somebody's personal opinion. Even though Hinman technically said, just my personal opinion. How was his personal opinion touted in mainstream media and crypto media and all over social media? It was touted as official SEC decree in many, many instances. Did the SEC ever come out and say, whoa, you guys are getting a little ahead of yourselves. This is just Billy Boy Hinman's opinion here. When did they say that? They never clarified that. They're just like, well, here's the desired intent. That's what it looks like to me anyway. Paul Graywall then continues and he writes, overall, the SEC's response reinforces Coinbase's long-standing concern that our industry does not have clarity on what the SEC may consider to be within or outside its jurisdiction at any time. And it's likely to continue changing its mind along the way. We look forward to the opportunity to reply formally next week. And as always, we continue to appreciate the court's careful consideration. Here's something from Library, which got sued effectively into non-existence. They've indicated that they are effectively defunct already, unfortunately, and they're going to actually cease to exist. The Library credit token will continue to exist because that's, it's a decentralized cryptocurrency. But here's what Library had to say about this. The SEC repeatedly cited a single sentence from an unpaid volunteer moderator in our community chat as evidence that LBC was a security. Meanwhile, the SEC argues in Coinbase filing that even statements from senior staff of the SEC about securities law don't mean anything. And isn't that ridiculous? Just think about that. Just some random person, unpaid volunteer moderator in the Library community, saying stuff, and then the SEC says what? That's evidence LBC's a security? Yet at the highest levels of the SEC with Kim Jong-Gensler at the top, they can say whatever the hell, and that's not an indication of anything. Oh, the hypocrisy. These are disgusting people. Here's what Attorney Jeremy Hogan had to say. The Coinbase writ was never about getting an answer to whether the SEC will fairly regulate crypto. That's obviously a no. This was a Coinbase offensive against the SEC lawsuit against it coming this summer. And it got some interesting tidbits to use. So pause to think about that. I love how Attorney Hogan's legal mind works here. So it's not about getting clarity, and I never thought that Coinbase thought that they'd get some actual clarity out of this. So what is the purpose? And well, according to Attorney Hogan here, there's a bit of strategery going on up in this bitch. So it's about getting information, and it looks like a little fishing expedition may have worked. And then Attorney Hogan says, trial work is not really about the law. I mean, you use the law, but the idea is always to make your client look like the good guy and the other side the bad guy. Juries will always help the good guy. That's what Coinbase was after, and I think it got some stuff it can use. Strategery, my friends, strategery. Here's what Attorney John Deaton had to say. Although I agree with Paul Graywell that there are good people on staff working at the SEC, I believe the SEC as an institution is indefensible. It is a broken agency that does not honor its core mission statement. The Dow report was July 2017, followed by the ICO craze. Between 2017 through 2020, the SEC filed and prosecuted 57 cases involving digital assets. By the way, XRP was the second or third largest crypto asset, but was untouched during these 57 prosecutions. In June 2018, we got the Hinman speech, and the SEC put it on its website. In 2019, the SEC issued its framework for digital assets and said a virtual currency used for payments and as a substitute for fiat was unlikely to satisfy the Howey test. By the way, XRP was designated a virtual currency utilized in a decentralized payment system in 2014 by USGAO. By the way, a year later, XRP was designated virtual currency by FinCEN in 2015 and again in 2019 by FSOC. Also in 2019, Jay Clayton stated that he agreed with Hinman's speech and also agreed that a token could start off as a security, but subsequent sales do not satisfy Howey. Despite all of that history, and despite it being an entire decade later, the SEC makes the argument and cites cases in its brief where 20 or 30 years is reasonable and adequate to provide guidance or clarity to the market. The SEC is broken. Spot on. So the fact that Coinbase waited as long as it did to file, obviously it was a reasonable and correct move, because the SEC, they were never going to on their own just respond to that, especially as Attorney Deaton points out here. In the brief said 20 or 30 years is reasonable. 20 or 30 years. So we're just going to go decades and then what, somehow magically everything just falls into place after 2 or 3 decades? Folks, the good news is there are going to be different administrations in charge along the way, but this is the reason also that Attorney Deaton's been saying for a long time. Don't count on Congress to fix the problem anytime soon, even though Congress is what has the power to make that happen. Here we have perspective from Attorney James Murphy, who goes by Meta Lawman on Twitter. I always find him to be rather insightful. And here's what he said. Breaking, SEC responds to Coinbase suit. And, no surprise, the SEC is playing a classic delay strategy. Here's what you should know. Coinbase is seeking a court order to force the SEC to simply answer whether it will or will not grant Coinbase's request that the SEC engage in rulemaking with respect to digital assets. The SEC is refusing to give that answer. Not yet, anyway. The SEC argues, number one, it hasn't decided whether to grant Coinbase's petition for rulemaking yet. 2, it's fully within its rights to wait years, literally, to decide whether to grant the petition. Folks, let's pause here. If the fact that they're waiting this long is part of the strategy. It's to just drag this out as long as possible, go for the jurisdictional land grab, hopefully get some wins from the courts, and not answer anything that would actually help investors or any other type of market participant here. There's no intent to answer this stuff. They're happy to let years and years pass. And then he continues, number 3, it intends to keep right on suing crypto companies without any new rules. The SEC did cite some case law where courts have denied relief to petitioners in cases where government agencies have waited years to take action on petitioners. So, the SEC argues, the slow roll of the Coinbase petition is completely acceptable for government work. Bottom line, it is entirely possible that the SEC will get away with this delay tactic. So, the long-awaited Ripple decision continues to loom critically important. Excellent thread, and I appreciate the insight from everybody. Unfortunately, it is the case, especially for, you know, anybody who holds crypto that isn't XRP. So to some degree, even unfortunate for me and anybody out there that holds coins in it, like listening now, that holds coins in addition to XRP. Bad news for anybody else. But for those of us holding XRP, at least we'll be the among the first to have regulatory clarity, presumably to the positive, although I admit even that's not a guarantee at this particular moment in time. We need to see what Judge Torres has to say about this. But that will be precedent setting for the entire crypto space. And I think the only way that you're going to see an appeal on Judge Torres' decision is if Ripple loses. Ripple will appeal, but I'm with Attorney Hogan in suspecting that the SEC is not. They could appeal, but I don't think that's what's probable. And Attorney Hogan really doesn't think that they'd be doing that because then you're talking about an appellate court that agreed to which that's would be precedent setting if they lost at an appellate level. That just cements it to such a degree that the SEC's entire approach to just destroying the crypto asset class would be ruined. So I'd like that, not that I want this to drag out further regarding the SEC v. Ripple case, but for participants in crypto, just broadly speaking, that would be good. What a wacky world we live in, man. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the Moon Family Sedan.